from all, to all, with all, for all, through all. We thank the gods of creation. We thank the ancestors. We thank the forces of nature. And we thank the earth. We thank them for their direction, their protection, their guidance, for keeping us, showing us, allowing us to know and enjoy life to its fullest, now and later.
Black people who once loved with the slow march of time. Time was ours to hold in the soft, low-born chambers of our hearts. And was we, the Afro mommies and daddies of a sun world, would turn our strands of hair into antennas to tune in the juju madness and syncopated love rhythms of Africa. And we loved with time, and we took the time to love, and with the right time we loved, and we loved time after time. Will we ever love again? Will we ever love again? Will we really ever love again? Or will we just sit and rot away with the brighter tomorrows in the skag field, rat-cluttered halls of our minds?
Black people, what y'all gonna do? Black people, what y'all gonna do?
Will the real black people please stand up?
Let our rejoicing rise high as listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rise.
To you, my brothers and sisters, may the peace and blessings of Almighty Creator revealed to all and known by many names, and of our positive African ancestors rest and abide with each and every one of you. May their protective hand be with you, their prosperity and wisdom. I am indeed thankful this evening to be able to gather with you in the discussion of this subject. And I'm thinking about the fact that there was a time when more than two Africans would gather together here in this hostile environment to discuss anything they were viewed with suspicion. But if they were found discussing the topics that you discuss in this place, their lives were set on the line. Tonight we're able to gather here in this setting that is truly a setting of our own creation and have our own little bit of Africa tonight, our own oasis in the midst of the storm. And so it is a wonderful experience to be able to share that with you here this evening. How you feeling? Good. You're looking good. Looking real good. I want to give special thanks to the organization that brought us in, as it's the AUM. UAM, I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you. UAM, United African Movement, isn't it? Yes, thank you. And Brother Bundy, who was so kind to and looked after me so well once I got here in the city, and I'm so thankful for his kindness and care and keeping. And Dr. Felder, who I understand is one of my best press agents here, one of Fourth Dynasty's best press. We didn't even know that you were with the organization. We're all together. I understand he is the foremost press agent for Fourth Dynasty Publishing Company here. Brother Roy Canton and Attorney Maddox, Brother Mark Rowley for his stimulating interview on the program today. I want to thank them. Now, before I get into the topic for this evening, I just have to do a black nationalist commercial for a moment to mention to you, you know that we are with Fourth Dynasty Publishing Company, which is owned and operated by the Barashango family, and which is committed to disseminating the accurate information relative to African people. And to this evening, unfortunately, I was only able to bring a few copies of African People and European Holidays, A Mental Genocide, Book 1 and 2, but I do have a goodly bit of copies of God, the Bible, and the Black Man's Destiny, which covers some 800 historical, biblical, and scientific facts on the African origin of the Bible, the African origin of Christianity, and many other subjects along that line, as well as the very beautiful African woman, the original guardian angel, which documents some of the wonderful and major contributions made by the black woman, her creation of an ongoing contribution to world civilization. So they are available there at the table. Our topic this evening in our discussion is holidays from the perspective of African-centered historical reality. So often we are compelled by the conditions and the environment we live in to look at things in a fantasy manner, a fantastic way, rather than from the viewpoint of reality. The object of the whole African-centered movement in bringing forth accurate information, not only in terms of history, but every other field of discipline, is to be certain that we as a people are able to be confronted with and be made to deal with and to have the tools, the powerful weapons of reality. Whether that reality is pleasant or unpleasant, we must be able to deal with reality in order to be rational and sane and to reach that place for which we are being called to go. And that's why we entitled this topic tonight, Holidays from the Perspective of African-Centered Historical Reality. Why historical reality? I'm reminded of the words of El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, peace be upon him, affectionately known to us as Brother Malcolm, when he said, of all our studies, history is best qualified to reward all research. And so it is. When you get into the history of something, then you have a better understanding of what it is, what it was created for, what are its purposes and objectives. So that's why we're approaching it from the perspective of an African-centered historical reality. African-centered because there has been, and we are still being subjected to a Eurocentric worldview. And there's still a great and wondrous struggle going on to break the bonds of that worldview. And so now we must view things from what we are, and we are an African people. I know I don't have to explain that to anybody in here tonight. And that's how you see things. It's how you look at things from your experience. We have several premises I would like to discuss with you before we get into the historical elements of the topic tonight. The first premise is holidays are the institutionalized celebration of the thoughts and ideas of a particular philosophical worldview. What does that mean in essence? Not that you really need an explanation of it, but I always have to explain sometimes even what I say to myself. The institutionalization of our own thoughts and ideas and our own creations. Part of the process of doing that and helping to keep those thoughts and ideas alive and nurturing us and motivating us in our everyday existence and our everyday struggle and fight for total mental, physical, and spiritual liberation from this beast here, from this hostile environment. As a part of that process, celebrations play a very definite role. Holidays are important to us. But in those holidays, if they do not reflect our life experience, if they do not reflect the positive aspects of our worldview, of how we see the world, of how we understand the things around us, then we have to ask the question, what good are those holidays to us? Should we be celebrating them or should we be celebrating something else? Let me stop here for a minute to discuss something that Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop set forth. And that is the idea, it has always been known to us who have been aware and thinking people and in the process of continued evolutionary path of enlightenment, that there was a quantitative and qualitative difference between the way that we as a people look at the world and the way Europeans look at the world. Brother Malcolm stated it so beautifully and straightforward. He said, when you sit down to the table with the white man to discuss an issue, to discuss an idea, you're not speaking the same language. It was difficult for some of the Negro leaders of that day to understand what he was talking about, because they knew they were saying the same words. They were discussing the Constitution, they were discussing the Bill of Rights, they were discussing the Declaration of Independence and all those things. The white man was using the very same words that the black people were using. However, they were not speaking the same language, simply because they had a diametrically opposed worldview. Diop puts it in these words. It's the difference between xenophobia and xenophilia. And that is, the European has a fear of anything different, of other people and cultures that is different from him. And therefore he must control them in some manner or eradicate them. Like the child who has never grown up. You stop running around here, here's black men, big strapping Nubian looking black men that can snatch telephone poles up out the ground talking about, I got to go to work for the man. He's not the man. You the man. He never grew up. And why do I say that? How can I say that? I can say it because Jerusalem Slim, who you call Jesus Christ, we used to call him Brother Jerusalem Slim in the seminary, said that it is by the fruit of a tree that you know what that tree is. What he produces is what you know what that tree is. And the very fact that when people do not do what he wants them to do, he acts just like a little child, like the demon seed. Either you do it or I'll hurt you, or I'll take my marbles and get out of the game. Most of the time I wish he would just take his marbles and go on by his business. But he's not satisfied with doing that. He's got to come back and try to control the game again. He's perfectly all right with me, because I know left on our own, we really, when we have nothing else to do but on our own, we can do it. And we'll do it fast. We won't drag it out then. But this xenophobia, this fear, is the motivating factor, as Dr. Francis Welsing tells us in the book, The ISIS Paper Keys to the Color, is the major motivating factor of white folks. Now, I'm going to come to the holidays, but I got to lay this groundwork here. I hope y'all can be patient with me. One of the reasons is because I have to constantly be defending myself with black folks, because I discuss the historical realities of the European. And I'm going to stop doing that. Black folks wouldn't even come out to see me a long time until I let some white folks come in. That's why I was so glad to get here. One of the few places in the world where I can go where I am totally in an African environment, and you don't want nothing else here but Africa. Now, African people, in their natural state of being, and most peoples of color, tend to have a xenophilic approach to life. That is a love of other people, an embracing of other cultures, a sharing of culture. So you have these two different things. So now, when you celebrate European holidays whose major motivation is the fear of his genetic annihilation, his phobia of other human beings, what type of celebrations do he have? Those celebrations that are built around that worldview, which is essentially xenophobic. When you celebrate that, you are celebrating something opposed to your very nature, because you are by nature in your natural state, and I'm saying natural state now, because a lot of us done got out of our natural state. We done breathed the Holy Ghost, as Jesus talked about. If you know what that means, those who understand, let them understand what has been said. And when you are in your natural state, your idea and purposes for a celebration is different. So I wanted to deal with that first premise. You still with me? You all right? The second premise, the celebration of holidays establishes and helps to maintain a strong emotional and cultural bond between you and that which you are celebrating. A strong emotional and cultural bond between you and that which you are celebrating. Anything that you jump up and down and sing about and dance about long enough becomes very much a part of your being, and you feel something for that because it brought you joy at the time that you were doing it. So you have an emotional and a cultural bond and connection with it. The question arises, when we celebrate European holidays, what are we binding ourselves to? It's another question on that third premise, on that second premise. The third and final premise here. Holidays are very common and natural to human beings, and you should have times to celebrate. I'm involved in the African liberation struggle until I am taken home to my ancestors, unless I should lose my mind, and when I do that, somebody please put me out of my misery. Because if Ishakamusa is no longer involved in the liberation movement, then you know he has gone plumb crazy. And he needs to be taken and worked with, and to bring all the African-centered behavioral sciences to try to heal me and lock me up till I get straightened out. As long as I'm in my right mind, I'm committed to the African liberation struggle. However, I do not view it as a struggle, as said. It's the African liberation movement. Because many times when brothers and sisters get to talking about we involved in the struggle, they make it hard for themselves and anybody else who may be interested in it. It is a happy thing that we do, those who are participating in it. We chose that this is the road we would go rather than be manipulated and controlled by something or someone else. Now that's a happy choice. That's a choice that a lot of people don't even know they have. So now the fact that you made that choice, you must be a happy warrior. It must be a joyful task. You fight better when you're happy. Even if when it comes to the point where you have to take an enemy's head off, do it with a smile. And by all means, when you talking to your brothers and sisters, always talk up. Always speak hope. Always speak joy. Always speak the fulfillment of the promise that has been given to our mothers and our fathers ever since the days that we were brought off the slave ships here. They knew from generation to generation that this day would come. So talk in them terms. I have it in my household. When I ask my children what happened, they have to respond on demand. Say, what's happening? Black folk on the rise. Don't tell me I don't know. Some stuff like that. And when they forget, I keep asking the question until I get the answer I want. They get tired of it, but at least it's a part of the right programming process, conditioning process. So it's natural for us to be happy and to celebrate. We started out by celebrating the harvest on our own land when we created the science of agriculture, the success of the hunt, the rituals and celebrations of the rites of passage. All these things are good reasons for celebration. For us, we have a lot to celebrate in that we were able to survive this beast all this time in this hostile environment and still come out with some degree of sanity. I said some degree because, as Dr. Ben says, we are all crazy to some extent, having been here and survived under these conditions. But we're still able to function. And also we celebrated so often victory over an enemy. But never in the history of the world have I ever heard of a people celebrating the victory of their enemies over them. Do you get my point here? They may remember that, but they will not celebrate it. The only people I know now presently in the world is the Negro and other people who are mentally subjugated by white supremacist culture around the world that celebrate their enemies' defeat of them. So when we study European holidays, we have to ask, whose victory are we celebrating? All right, I hope y'all don't get angry with me in here. I don't mean to be a killjoy, but I just have to deal with history, the story, our story, as it is. Now, I'm going to attempt to, and you'll have to let me know when my time is coming up, because Dr. Ben said, I ain't got time, watch. I have to move with the spirit. And in the spirit world, we don't know nothing about no time to get into it. But I know y'all got things doing that thing, so you have to let me know when I get there, all right? I'm just going on now. We're going to try to deal with 5 European holidays, some historical perspective on them. And that is, who discovered Columbus? Because he sure didn't discover me. The second one is Halloween, and I forgot what sister, who was the sister on the radio program, Dr. Felder, with us that day at WLIB, that came up with that, the Night of the Living Dead. Misgiving, a celebration of horrors. Xmas, the merry mess. And even if I don't get to some of the others, I'm going to talk about America's Independence Day, the 4th of July. I'm going to get to that one if I don't get to nothing. So y'all pray for me now. Y'all send out good vibrations so I can, In order to deal with this who discovered Columbus, and I'm starting out with the Columbus Day thing because that's how they begin the whole holiday season here in this country. That opens the whole thing up. And the reason why I'm putting a lot of emphasis on that this evening is because all this year here in 1992, they're going to be talking about the quincentennial of the coming of Columbus. And they will be bombarding our children's minds with this, intimidating them with this. And their peers will be looking at them and saying, why are you not into this? And we have to give them a strong, sound historical basis and logical basis upon which to say, I just ain't with that. That ain't down. That ain't happening for me. I dish that. That's what they say in the world. And this is the reason why I recommend that. I didn't come here to tell you what to do or to make any choices for you, only to show you the other side of the coin. Some of you have already seen that side of the coin, but it ain't going to hurt us to look at it again. At that time period, talking about 1492, now we must assess here briefly what was going on in the world then. Contrary to what we have been miseducated to believe, the world was not waiting for white folks to come and bring them Christianity, civilization, or any other thing. They didn't invite them, and they weren't looking for them. They did not need them for anything whatsoever. If you study what was going on in the Olmec and the Mayan and the Aztec civilizations here, and what was going on in China and India and everywhere else around the world and on the mother continent, nobody needed what white folks had to offer. So I want to get that clear. So there was nothing they could bring us but misery, as history has shown. Why do I say that? First of all, I have to go back about 700 years or so before 1492, if y'all don't mind. Talk about one of the great periods of the many wonderful periods of our history on this planet. And that's when the Moors left from the motherland, went over and on the island which later became known as Gibraltar under Gibraltar al-Tariq, and from their base of operations in their fort there on the rock of Hercules, between the pillars of Hercules as they call it, they moved now into Spain. They were 80% indigenous, jet black, broad-nosed, thick-lipped, kinky-haired Africa. That is what the documents of history say, not what I say. This is empirical evidence we're talking about here. 20% so-called Semitic Arabs who joined in. The Semitic Arabs or Muslims had nothing to bring to the Muslims on the motherland. When they left out of Arabia and were traveling around for their conquest, they left with a little more knowledge than how to raise camels and how to have herd sheep. It was only after they went in and conquered Egypt that they now come out with this new light and knowledge. This resurrection of the old classics and the zero and all that. And it was the indigenous Africans still living in what came to be misnomered as Egypt, in Kemet there, which introduced them and taught them just like they had taught the Greeks, the Romans, and everyone else who had conquered them. For as Asa Hilliard tells us, they conquered us militarily, but we always conquered them culturally and scientifically, for we had the knowledge to do that. Why, even in slavery, they had to depend on the black slaves to teach them how to do things. So even though we were their slaves, we still had to conquer them morally and intellectually. I want you to think about that. They didn't have to teach us how to read and write when we first got here. We already knew how to do that. It was only the next generations where they had taken that from. But we had to come back and learn that again. Most of them who brought us here couldn't read and write. Now, at the time that these Africans went into Spain, not 5 kings or queens throughout all of Europe in any of their nations could read or write. Not 5 were literate. And couldn't anybody read the Bible but a few of the priests who could read, and it was chained to the wall so that only they could read it. The common people did not have it. I'm trying to get you these good God-fearing people with these halos around their head that came and over here killed up the indigenous red man and captured us and brought us the light of God and Christianity and Jesus. Most of them didn't know it, so how could they teach us anything about it? Now, when the Moors came in, they brought with them the light of knowledge and established the first universities there. They also taught geography from globes. That's a matter of record. They taught from globes, and even after they taught in Spain for some 800 years, the Spanish still believed that the world was flat. A hard people to teach. And if you haven't learned that by now, as the song says, if you don't know it by now, you'll never know it. Why am I going through all this? Because the African had been sailing ships up and down the Nile, up and down the Niger, up and down the Senegal River for thousands of years. Navigational science was a way of life to him. That kind of knowledge did not exist in Europe before the Africans, before the Moors went and took it to Europe. I'm sorry we did it, but it happened. Now, in 1310, Mansa Muhammad Abubakar II looked out over the Ethiopian Sea. It wasn't called the Atlantic Ocean. It was the Ethiopian Sea. How do I know that? Because I looked at the maps of the 15th and the 16th century. There. And others have looked at it. He looked out over the sea. He said, if we can navigate the Niger, he was the emperor of the Mali Empire at that time. He said, if we can navigate the Sahara Desert, we can deal with that Ethiopian Sea out there. So he went to work building. He went to work building with a knowledge which had been preserved by the University of Sankore at Timbuktu and other university systems right there in the motherland. And he sent out 200 ships, 100 with crews of Africans, and 100 for supplies to carry them for 2 years if necessary. Now, I mean, if you think you can go on the ocean for 2 years, you bad stuff. You know something. Because the man loved his people. He was responsible for the people. He was a leadership. He wouldn't send them out somewhere not knowing where he was sending them. And he told them, say, don't stop till you come to land. I know there's land over there because our people have been traveling over there ever since the days of the pharaohs and possibly before. Some time passed by and only one ship came back. And the ship captain that came back, according to the report given by Abubakar's successor, says that his report went thusly. Sire, we traveled and we followed the wind gust that would take us straight across the Ethiopian Sea. But we reached a place where there was a great churning river and an awesome mist. And all the other ships went into that mist and I never saw them again. We somehow got spent out of it and were headed back in this direction, so we came home. So what did Abubakar II do? In 1311, I said, what year did I say? 1310, now we have 1311. How far is that from 1492? 1311 now. This black man says, hook me up 400 ships. 200 to carry people and 200 to carry supplies. And I'll see you later. He gave him 5 and got in the wind. After conferring the emperorship on Mansa Musa. He was never heard from on the continent again. But the records of the Aztecs, the Olmecs, and some of the other people there recorded that a strange group appeared on their land. Hundreds upon hundreds of black men with gold spears and golden shields, and one tall jet black man with gold in his braids in his hair, golden slippers, stood under a golden pavilion. And the indigeni bowed down and said, "Hail our God, Quetzalcoatl has returned." That's in 1311. Now, before I get back up to 1492, y'all all right? Okay, I don't want to bore you with all this stuff here. Before I get up to 1492, I got a couple of more dates. Because it's impossible to talk about Columbus without a whole bunch of other names coming up before you. Of course, we know Cortez, Hernandez, Balboa, and all the rest of them. None of them were noble people. They were not noble men. They were criminals, sea dogs, pirates, and deserved no honor from us. But also there is Prince Henry the Navigator, Bartholomew Diaz, Vasco da Gama, and Jan von Riebeck. Because at the time now that they were preparing, when they were about to drive out, and I got to come back to 1492 and then switch back a minute. I'll be coming back and forth, but you can hang with me. The last stronghold of the Moors, who had been there for some 800 years. And as Dr. John Henry Clark said, it was one of the few times that Africans had partnerships with other people and they came out all right for a while. The Arabs betrayed us in the end. The Jews we brought into Europe helped to get us out of, the black Jews we brought in, undermined us with the Spanish to help the downfall of the last stronghold of the Moorish Empire of the Kingdom of Granada in 1492. The same year that your boy made his travel, got lost. When they drove the Moors out of Spain, this is what they declared: we cannot afford to be embarrassed by the superior intelligence of these people any longer. They must not be allowed to get themselves strengthened and come back here again. They will never rise again, and the only way to stop them is to go to the lands from which they emanate and stop them. We couldn't do that before because we did not know how to navigate the sea. We did not know how to build ships. But now that we have run them out of here, we can take the knowledge that they left behind and we can now go and exploit the world. Not explore the world, exploit the world. And in that way, we can continue to ensure our genetic survival. And so, in 1444, Prince Henry the Navigator leaves out of Portugal and heads down the west coast of Arquebulan, commonly known as Africa. Because the Portuguese were heading for Africa, the Italians and the French and the Germans were still trading with the East, but Spain couldn't get through to the East because they would have had to fight the Germans, the French, and the Italians to do it. They would have had to fight the Portuguese to get to Africa, so Spain said the only place for us to go is west. No place else to go. But we got to find some land to exploit, or the other nations around us are going to become so strong and so rich, and they will whip us and subjugate us to them. These are Europeans, talking about fighting among Europeans now. Prince Henry the Navigator comes down to the Congo and begins immediately, after taking back 4 of Mother Africa's children, begins to recommend the slave trade from there, to bring in, import Africans into slavery into Portugal. In 1487 to 1488, Bartholomew Diaz, another Portuguese, rounded the Cape of what they call Good Hope in southern Arquebulan, Tanzania, because I don't know where South Africa is. I look on the map, I cannot find it. I know where Tanzania is. That's what the people who are struggling there for their liberation call it. Then in 1497, Vasco da Gama rounded that cape and found the route they were looking for to India. What it was, these people were going hungry. They were suffering from diseases. They were being decimated by the plague and everything else. So they were going to other lands to find medicines, to find other things for their own survival. They were not going to carry the light of civilization. They were not going to bring people to Jesus. They were not going for any of those reasons. They were going for economic reasons and strictly survival reasons. That's what it was all about. That's why I say when they tell your children in school about the great explorers, no, they were exploiters. They were not explorers. But here's the kicker. I'm going to be back to 1492 in a minute. In 1652, the Dutch East India Company, which was trading in the slaves, most of its money was made from slave trade of African slaves, sent a naval surgeon named John von Riebeck, and he established the first white settlement in Tanzania, known as Cape Town. Now, why am I going through all that? Because African children there who are compelled by the miseducation system, the white supremacist miseducation system of the USA there, the Union of South Africa, same initials as the United States of America, tell these children that they must celebrate the arrival of Vasco da Gama, Bartholomew Diaz, and Jean von Riebeck. And their arrival opened up the door for the destruction of their civilization and the state that they're in now. Now that is mental and cultural genocide. However, many of us here have no problem seeing that in relationship to Tanzania, but we have a problem seeing it in relationship to our experience here in America. And I say, and I hope I can back it up, that to tell our children to celebrate Columbus Day is the same as telling our brothers and sisters on the continent to celebrate the arrival of Jean von Riebeck. The same equation. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you a little background on Christopher here. Drop my notes down here somewhere. Hold on a minute. I'll be with you. I'm not gone. Get a little background on him. First of all, his name was Cristobal Colon. He was a Jew. A Jew. His parents were Jews born in Spain who were baptized Jews, Christianized Jews, to survive there in Europe, because the Europeans were running the Jews all over. I mean, they were giving them hell there in Europe. I have to say that. He was a Christianized Jew who was born to a mother and father who was in the weaving business. At the age of 14, he became a sailor, and it settled in Genoa, Italy. Now, in his travels to the west coast of Africa and other ships he had sailed on, he learned about several things. One, he learned about the Moors having taught that the earth was round from the globes they taught geography when they were in Spain, and they were still using now at the universities in West Africa. He also purchased a map that was used by the Moorish sea kings, who had mapped out the route going across the Ethiopian Sea, coming here to what was later to be misnomed the Americas. This was very precious. You ever read in those comic books about finding a map that shows you hidden treasure and people hold it and say, God, that's what he did with that. That's why he could run around saying to the other ignorant ones, the world is round, give me some money and I'll prove it. Well, how you know that? Well, I can't let you know, just give me some money. You know? He was selling the information. Economic thing. When he came to, I'm not going to go through the whole story there with him, but when he came to Isabella and Ferdinand with his plan, they originally had rejected it. But there was one person who came and saved the day for Columbus. And his name was Luis de Santander, a baptized Jew who was finance minister to Ferdinand. And he said to Isabella, who said, well, now I don't have that much money. Maybe I can, to finance a venture like this, I can pawn my jewels. You know, we heard in school that she pawned her jewels. No, she didn't. He told her, you don't have to do that, because I have a cartel of moneylenders. Why did he have a cartel of moneylenders? Because one of the few businesses that Jews were allowed to engage in Europe was pawnbroking, money lending. And therefore they developed a mercantile class which gave them outreach and connections and networking with other nations. So they had that hookup that by the time of the Rothschilds spread everywhere all over Europe. And they had to finance every war that Europe went into. There. Now, he goes to his cartel which consists of Don Isaac Abravanel, Juan Cabrero, and Abraham Senor. All Jews. They raised $98,000 to get the 3 ships for Columbus to come over here. On his way over here, he has to stop, go down, because you can't come over here unless you went down the west coast of Africa. And one of the reasons why he went to the west coast of Africa is a brother he had met when he was there before that would be most vital to that mission, that lived in Sierra Leone. His name was Pedro Alonso Nina, one of the most celebrated navigators in the world at that time. Put him upon the ship, either the Pinta or the Nina, I don't remember which one now. Santa Maria, thank you. And they now come over, they're on their way over here, but they don't go further enough to the south, and the wind can't carry them directly to Brazil, so they're delayed for some time, and it's an arduous journey. The journey is so bad that the crew threatens to mutiny. And they tell him, if we don't see some land soon, we're going to throw your butt off the ship and we're going back to Spain. Because Colon said, the king, queen told him, he said, man, I can't go back without something. They didn't let me this money because he made them promise to make him admiral of the sea and that he could get 10% of everything he could steal once he got here. It was an economic venture now, I'm telling you. So now he comes, he's not far from land, they're about to commit mutiny, and I understand, I'm told that Pedro Alonso Nina looks off of his ship and he sees floating in the water twig with leaves on it and some blossoms, which is a sure sign that they're not far from land. So he says, hold on, don't mutiny yet, we gotta be near land to see something like that. And then a few hours later, they do see land. I'm not proud of it, but the brother saved Christopher Colon's behind right then and there. Now, when he gets here, this is the report he gives to Spain when he returns. He leaves a large portion of his crew here on the island of what was to become known as Haiti. I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to come back to that in a minute. You all right? Y'all so quiet out there. I hope I ain't boring. When he gets to bring his report back to Spain, I know I'm hopping around quite a bit, but I'm trying to cover a lot in a few minutes here. And as I read from African People and European Holidays, Mental Genocide, Book 1, page 32, this is the report that Christopher Colon made to his sovereigns in Spain. He's describing the people he encountered here. The people he what? That means the people that were what? Already here. As one comedian said, you can't discover nobody who don't want to be discovered. How you going to discover something that's already there? He says this, so tractable, so peaceful are these people that I swear to your majesties, there is not in the world a better nation. Do you hear what he's saying? This white man that was supposed to have to come to these savages and stop them from eating up each other and teach them about God and everything and civilize them, he's saying he has never encountered a better nation than what he encountered of these people here. They love their neighbors as themselves. What did he say? I thought we had to wait until the white man come to teach us that. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's a part of the Christian doctrine. Love your neighbor as yourself. These people already had it. They didn't need anybody to bring it to them. It's already here. And their discourse is ever sweet and gentle and accompanied with a smile. And though it is true that they are naked, now to Europeans, anybody that wasn't covered from head to toe was naked. Because as Francis tells you, they had a problem with their own physical body. African people and people of color like to get that sun, get that Ra into them. Women could walk around bare-breasted because they would not be disrespected. Nobody would disrespect. Couldn't do that today. because of our minds been twisted all out of shape. But it was, nobody would think to disrespect an African woman in those days. It was unheard of. And it could cost you your life. In some communities today, it can cost you your life. Says, though they are naked, yet their manners are decorous and praiseworthy. Columbus goes on to recommend that these friendly and hospitable people be made to work and sow and do all that is necessary to adopt our ways. Do you dig that? Sheer arrogance. To adopt our ways. The people were all right the way they were. They didn't need anything from him. After which he displayed the 10 Taino Indians he had captured and brought to Spain. Now, on his second voyage back, I've got to read something to you. Is that all right? And so some people won't call me a racist in reverse. I'm going to read from a white man this time, okay? Will Durant in the Story of Civilization, Volume 6. This is what he wrote about it. When Columbus returned on his second voyage, after he had left this colony of Spaniards there on the island of Haiti, he returns now and, mercy, hold on again, to this island to see what had happened, what had taken place while he was gone making his report to Spain. This is his second journey now. And it says here that 10 months after leaving these people there, that hardly a man remained of the colony, remained of it. The Europeans, and this is in Will Durant's language now, had roamed the island, robbing the natives of gold and women. They had established a tropical paradise with 5 women to each man. They had quarreled and murdered one another, and nearly all the rest had been killed by the outraged Indians. Now the brothers had opened up their arms and said, come on in, there's plenty, you know. We'll share. These folk acted so bad, they made the bloods bad there, and they started killing them, which was their right to do. They say they should have slain them at the bay in the first place. I'm not talking violence, I'm not talking hatred, I'm talking our survival. He goes on to write, he turned back towards Haiti October. He left another colony there now, and he went on to explore some other islands, right? Look for some other islands to exploit, because up until this time he hadn't found really anything to take home but those 10 indigeni there, which they call Indians there. And Isabella and Ferdinand said, you better come up with something more than that, because we got to pay this $98,000 back to them Jews. So you better come up with something. That ain't gonna get it. He turned back towards Haiti October the 29th, 1494, wondering how his new settlement had fared. He was shocked to find that it had behaved like its predecessor, that the Spaniards had raped native women, stolen native stores of food, and kidnapped native boys to serve as slaves, and that the natives had killed many Spaniards in revenge. Columbus himself now became a slave dealer. Let me read that again. Listen very carefully to this. Written by Will Durant, one of the Dr. Will Durant, one of the foremost European historians. In the Story of Civilization, Volume 6, page 265. If you don't have it, go to the library and check it out. Columbus himself now became a slaveholder. He sent out expeditions to capture 1,500 natives. 400 of these he gave to settlers, 500 he dispatched to Spain, 200 of these died on the voyages. The survivors were sold at Seville, but died in a few years unable to adjust themselves to the colder climate or perhaps to the savagery of civilization. brother said over there, syphilization. The third settlement that he left here had survived, but one of every 4 of the 500 Spaniards that he left there in 1496 was suffering from syphilis. And the settlers had divided into 2 hostile groups that were now on the verge of war. These folks just love war. To appease the discontent, Columbus allowed each man to appropriate a large tract of land and to enslave the natives dwelling on it. This became the rule in Spanish settlements. With him on this voyage in 1498, as he crossed the Ethiopian Sea, he passed Africans on their way back home, carrying cargo. And when he got here, he said, "What was that I saw?" They said, "Oh, them the brothers from over there. They've been coming, the Sun people. They've been coming here a long time. They brought us some gold. We gave them some things. They took back. They'll be back later." They do that all the time. With him was one of the most infamous creatures that has ever walked on the face of the earth.
Come on, yeah, lift every voice to freedom. His name
Lift every voice.
Come on, listen, lift every voice to freedom. His name Come on.
Sing a song,
Yeah, talk to
full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
come on.
Sing a song, full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun
Facing the rising sun. Come on,
of our new day begun.
it's a new day.
Let us march on
Yeah.
till victory is
Yeah,
won.
until victory is won. Come on.
Till victory is
This is
won.
victory music. Come on, I hope you feel it.
Boba